Welcome to this deep dive. We have been handed just a stack of material that takes us behind the scenes of a truly wild, creative endeavor. The series documented in the Kidz documentary, too.
It's an incredible find.
It really is. And this is a universe where, established intellectual properties meet completely original and, frankly, often absurd characters.
That's right. And I want to be clear, this isn't just a summary of some fictional show. It's a look at the actual narrative architecture, the production realities that went into creating this highly chaotic metatextual series. We're looking at everything from surprising celebrity cameos at, key plot milestones to the very real logistical challenges of casting a universe this ambitious.
So what we have here are the literal building blocks.
The building blocks of a self-aware, genre-blending comedy that seems to embrace these IP crossovers not as a joke, but as a core tenet of its reality.
Absolutely. And the notes we have are so highly specific. I mean, they talk about character origins, plot milestones, production friction. It almost reads like an internal Bible for a very, very enthusiastic and extremely ambitious creator.
It does.
But before we really dig in, I think we need to address the elephant in the room here, which is context.
Yeah, you have to.
Based on this material, the Kidz documentary 2, it's not a straightforward show at all. It presents itself as a documentary or maybe a fictionalized, self-aware narrative about a group of gifted individuals, the Kidz, who seem to exist in a world where the boundaries between fictional universes are completely porous.
Exactly. And you have to understand that the series operates with the level of intentional narrative dissonance. It forces you, the viewer, to ask, how do you maintain any kind of narrative coherence when your core cast includes, humanized versions of animated birds,
Right.
the protagonists of a 90s sitcom revival, and a host from a children's educational program? It's a lot.
So the title, it implies a focus on these Kidz. But the real narrative strength, as we're seeing in these documents, is the sheer absurdity of the supporting cast.
That's where the magic is.
So our mission today is to extract the most fascinating specific nuggets from these internal notes and really analyze the implications of these creative leaps. Okay, let's unpack this. Specifically, the highly specific details about character origins, some of the most absurd plot milestones, and, the ultimate fate of this genre-defying series.
We're going deep. We're going to spend time analyzing character arcs that involve, of all things, specific Neil Armstrong impressions.
You can't make this stuff up.
And pivotal love interests that are plucked directly from children's television. I mean, what's so fascinating here is precisely that collision of disparate influences. It's a creative approach that just throws everything at the wall.
It really does.
You see evidence of established franchises just merging with completely original characters, creating this unique, if definitely challenging production environment. It's a testament to maximalist storytelling.
Let's jump right into that eclectic mix then. Let's start with the foundation, the ensemble cast that really anchored the series. We have a section here dedicated to the recurring favorites and side characters who help, flesh out this unusual world and provide some kind of grounding.
And that grounding, it often came from really unexpected places. Specifically, from characters brought over from established, relatively wholesome family sitcoms.
Which brings us to our first group, 1.1, the returning favorites and side characters. And the notes refer to them simply as the Fuller House people. These characters were introduced pretty early on, specifically in the season 2 premiere, and the notes highlight their immediate likability and these specific dynamics as they were folded into this new wild universe.
And they functioned essentially as this reliable comic relief and sort of emotional ballast. The notes clearly indicate that the creator understood the appeal of these characters. Kimmy and Fernando, for instance, they were cited specifically as being funny,
Right.
which suggests they successfully maintained their established, somewhat zany chemistry from their original series. They just translated that high-energy comic dynamic right into the new environment of Kidz.
But I think the key to their successful integration, and we see this in the notes, is that they didn't fundamentally change their character structure. They were recognizable.
Exactly.
Take Jackson, for example. I mean, despite being dropped into a universe involving villains and wars and these so-called Kidz, Jackson apparently stuck to his roots. He was described as his old, clumsy, dumb self.
And that is a highly important detail. I mean, when you take established IP characters, especially ones defined by really specific comedic traits, and you port them into a new show, you have to maintain that core identity for the audience.
The consistency is the joke itself.
It is. Jackson is the reliable, clumsy, slightly slow counterpoint to the more gifted or dynamic characters in the ensemble. His whole function is to ground the absurdity by remaining this constant, lovable goof.
And the notes also confirm the presence of the three girls as well, simply stating they were good.
Which is very telling.
Yeah, it suggests their primary function was just providing a stable, likable counterpoint as part of the overall family unit that allowed the focus to shift to the more outlandish elements of the plot without, losing the audience's emotional connection to the core cast.
So they're the narrative stability,
Mm-hmm.
while Kimmy and Fernando are the comic chaos. The very clean, very strategic use of existing characters. You leverage their pre-established likability and use them for either emotional support or these very specific comic beats.
Right. But the Fuller House crew, as important as they were for stability, they're just the frame. The real narrative chaos is embodied by the next group we need to look at. This is where the core concept of IP crossover comes into sharp focus.
Oh, yeah.
We're moving on to 1.2, the Angry Squad People, a franchise crossover.
This is where the creative decisions become truly audacious. The Angry Squad People, and the roster of names is impressive. Red, Chuck, Bomb, the Blues, that's Jay, Jake, and Jim, Matilda, Henry, Matthew, Stella, and Terrence.
It's a huge...
This isn't a small side crew. It's a massive self-contained ensemble within the larger cast, and their inclusion just speaks volumes about the show's identity.
And the crucial meta fact we learn right away is that this massive crew was based on the globally recognized Angry Birds franchise, except, and this is so important, they were presented as human characters in this documentary series.
That is a gigantic creative leap.
Huge.
Taking established non-human IP defined by, physics puzzles and transforming them into a human-speaking complex ensemble. This humanization process is really the source of so much of the series' unique flavor. It's an act of fan fiction elevated to professional narrative.
Absolutely. The creator clearly spent a lot of time thinking about how the core personality of the Birds, Red's temper, Chuck's speed, Bomb's explosiveness, how would that translate into human characteristics?
And for some of them, this translation resulted in truly bizarre and memorable arcs. Let's take Bomb's arc in seasons 6 through 8.
Okay.
Bomb, who is often defined by his volatility, his simplicity, and his original form, gained a really good running gag in Kidz documentary 2.
And that was?
His specific Neil Armstrong impression.
Wow. Okay, let's break that down. Neil Armstrong.
Yes. This specific detail is a treasure trove of comedic intent. Why Neil Armstrong? Bomb, the character whose original identity is literally an unstable, exploding projectile, now finds his comedic peak impersonating the foundational figure of calculated, controlled space exploration.
It's the highest form of lowbrow humor. It's all about the incongruity. It suggests that Bomb, the humanized bird, is maybe trying to project competence or some kind of history-based authority.
Which instantly fails because he's still Bomb.
Of course.
The joke isn't just the impression. The joke is the attempt by this chaotic figure to align himself with meticulous historical achievement. It really speaks to a very niche, very self-aware sense of humor operating within the series.
And it shows a real commitment to character specificity, especially in the later seasons. They didn't just rely on the established traits. They invented new, deeply personal quirks for these characters to keep them fresh across multiple seasons.
We see that development continue with the Blues, Jay, Jake, and Jim. The notes specify their growth. They aged up to 12 years old.
That's crucial for a long-running series. It shows the passage of time naturally, especially when you're dealing with younger characters.
But here's the balance they struck. Despite aging, they maintained their core mischievous identity. They still pull pranks, which is their brand, but their activities were updated for the modern viewer.
How so?
They now play PS5. So the creators made a conscious choice to evolve the setting, but not the spirit of the character.
That's the hallmark of successful long-form character writing. Their classic traits being disruptive, playful troublemakers, they endure, but the medium of their mischief evolves.
All right. They aren't stuck playing Game Boy forever.
Exactly. It's a clean way of demonstrating aging and realism without fundamentally altering the traits that make them functional within the narrative.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it just demonstrates a clear awareness by the creator that character development sometimes requires these subtle shifts in context, like aging up 12-year-old pranksters and giving them current gaming consoles while preserving the underlying personality.
Which in their case is just disruptive fun.
Exactly. It manages the audience's expectation for continuity while providing just enough novelty to justify their continued presence.
Now, let's turn our attention to some characters who rose from the absolute background to prominence. This is 1.3 characters in search of a storyline, and this is where the pragmatic realities of show production really start driving the narrative decisions.
This is the interesting case of First Sergeant and Robert. The notes explicitly state that they had no major roles in the earlier seasons. They were likely background characters, maybe military or authority figures, given First Sergeant's name.
Right, just populating the world.
Very minor players. But late in the series, in seasons 7 and 8, they stepped up and gained this massive visible role. They sang the new intro song, Dongtails.
Dongtails, okay. The document notes the song was good, but the fact that these previously minor, maybe even unused characters were suddenly entrusted with the series' opening theme, that's a huge leap in visibility and importance.
It is a classic example of constraint-driven creativity.
Yeah.
If we connect back to what we were just saying, it speaks volumes about the evolving nature of the show and, maybe the necessity of filling certain highly visible gaps using existing characters who were suddenly available or willing or maybe just affordable.
But I have to ask, if the song was good, why use characters that no one really knew? Why not use James or Laura, the main characters? Wouldn't that have been better for continuity?
That's a great question, and it raises an important point. The choice may have been purely logistical. Maybe the main actors were too busy or too expensive for the recording sessions for a new theme song.
That's possible.
Or it could be a deliberate creative choice. By giving the theme song to two background characters, the creator signals that in this universe, anyone, no matter how minor, can suddenly become a fixture. It enhances that documentary style.
Suggesting the focus isn't always on the traditional stars, but on whoever happens to step up to the microphone.
Precisely. It certainly supports the impression that the writers were constantly mining their own deep bench for new content. They recognize that if a character is already established, even if they're a blank slate, they can be deployed dramatically, or in this case, musically, when needed.
It turns a production necessity into a feature of the narrative style.
And that kind of structural fluidity, the idea that any character can suddenly become important, prepares us perfectly for the next section, which details a group whose entire identity revolves around a single, highly specific obsession.
An obsession that defines their whole existence. That transition takes us perfectly into the other side of the cast, the crew, whose identity is so deeply intertwined with media obsession that it literally shapes their reality.
And the naming convention alone, the Dumb People crew, is so telling. We are now entering a realm of characters defined primarily by their comedic deficiency and their singular focus on pop culture.
2.1. The core identity of the crew is encapsulated by their leader, King Smoothcheeks. The notes are very, very blunt. There's no ambiguity about his nature. He is defined as silly, goofy, and pretty stupid. This sets the low-stakes, high-energy tone for the entire group.
And their defining characteristic, the passion that binds them together and drives all their actions, is their deep, abiding love for watching the show Blue's Clues. It's this collective obsession that provides a really interesting counterpoint to the overarching high-stakes conflict of the series.
This sounds less like a conventional group of side characters in a, sci-fi action comedy and more like a bizarre organized fan club operating within a world populated by humanized angry birds and sitcom stars.
It's the ultimate juxtaposition. You have characters involved in these complex conflicts who also have to deal with a powerful crew whose only concern is a specific piece of children's media.
And this obsession isn't just a funny background detail, is it? The notes highlight that the consequence of this fixation is a key source of tension.
A huge source.
Yeah.
They drive the main character, James, crazy sometimes. Their obsession becomes this palpable source of frustration and comedy for the protagonist, who is, dealing with existential threats while simultaneously trying to manage a fanatical group preoccupied with paw prints.
It creates a brilliant dynamic. James is trying to deal with King Chaos and the war, but he's constantly being derailed by King Smoothcheeks and his crew, who are probably asking James for help locating a clue.
It just weaponizes distraction.
Yeah.
It uses the emotional toll of dealing with incompetence for comedic effect.
Oh.
And this level of devotion to Blue's Clues pays off in one of the most creatively daring plot points of the entire series.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The specific romantic development involving King Smoothcheeks in 2.2, The Surprising Season 3 Romance.
This detail, more than any other, showcases the creator's absolute fearlessness when it comes to intellectual property boundaries and narrative coherence. The leader of the Dumb People crew, King Smoothcheeks.
Yeah.
He finds a love interest who is none other than Joe from Blue's Clues.
Joe, the human host from the beloved children's educational show, famous for his oversized green striped shirt and his inability to find clues without the audience's help.
That's the one. And the timeline is precise. Smooth Cheeks meets Joe, and they eventually start dating sometime in season 3 of the second series. This is an established relationship woven into the narrative fabric. It's not a one-off gag.
Okay, we have to deconstruct this. This is
It
something
requires significant deconstruction. The show takes a character whose entire identity is defined by his stupidity and his fanatical obsession with Blue's Clues, and it rewards him with a relationship with the very object of his obsession.
It's the ultimate fantasy fulfilled.
But taken to a completely surreal and canonical extreme within the Kidz universe.
But doesn't this run a massive risk of completely compromising the show's tone? I mean, we have a serious main character, we have war, we have mature themes, and suddenly a character from a preschool show is dating the resident idiot? Is the goal here purely parody? Or does the show attempt to treat this relationship with some genuine emotional weight?
And that is the essential creative tension of the Kidz documentary, too. The notes suggest that while the setup is absurd, the relationship functions within the context of the show. It shatters the fourth wall, yes, but in doing so, it elevates the show's meta-commentary.
How so?
It's not just a joke about Joe. It's a statement that in this universe, belief is creation. The show validates King Smooth Cheeks' obsession by making his fictional idol real and available.
It completely justifies the crew's existence. They aren't just a distraction, they are proof that media worship can yield tangible results.
It requires you, the listener, to accept that IP boundaries are merely suggestions and that a deep, if goofy, appreciation for children's media can literally manifest a romantic partner who then participates fully in the subsequent plot.
And crucially, this relationship cements Blue's Clues as a major integral part of this universe's reality. It sets the stage for even more extensive and highly anticipated cameos later on.
The sheer audacity of this pairing is likely what generated significant audience engagement.
Absolutely. The show establishes that if you love something hard enough, it can become real and potentially your partner. And that commitment to high-stakes, boundary-bending storytelling leads us straight into the major plot milestones that shaped the series. And these often involved massive parties and even more unexpected celebrity appearances.
Right, we're shifting now from character origins to major narrative milestones. It is a common technique in ensemble series to use these enormous social gatherings as plot anchors because they efficiently allow the writers to justify bringing back every single character they've ever introduced.
Regardless of their franchise origin.
Exactly.
And the notes confirm that perfectly, with 3.1 The Christmas Wedding, grand scale and villainous disruption. This was clearly a favorite episode for the creator and a huge milestone. Laura and James finally marry, which presumably resolves years of romantic tension.
And the notes, they detail the specific production elements that made this episode feel like a true spectacle. It was noted as being awesome. We're talking about a significant investment in production value here.
Like what?
Elaborate wedding music, the set design featuring snow, and cool snow falling effects. This was clearly meant to be a high-stakes, visually impressive, holiday-themed event.
And the guest list was massive. It confirms that most of our favorite characters were present, so we can safely assume the Fuller House crew, the entire humanized Angry Squad, and the Dumb People crew, including Joe, were all there to witness the union.
It's an IP mashup party of the highest order.
It really is.
But the truly specific, almost mundane details that are nestled within this grand spectacle are what make the wedding unforgettable. First, the bizarre officiant.
Yeah.
Leonard the Walmart guy served as the priest.
Leonard the Walmart guy.
Leonard the Walmart guy. This casual integration of a specific, possibly recurring tertiary character from a highly commercial environment as the spiritual leader for the wedding. It just adds another layer of delightful, localized strangeness to the proceedings.
That's a classic move in metafiction. I mean, why invent a character for one scene when you can just use Leonard, the guy the characters probably run into weekly? It grounds the chaos in a very American, retail-driven reality.
And then we get to the climax,
Yeah.
which is perhaps the most narrative subversive detail in the entire document. The villains attempted to take over the wedding, a classic dramatic trope, right? Forces the heroes to stop the ceremony and fight.
A huge showdown.
Except they were thwarted by an unexpected character using a very specific, almost ridiculously mundane professional skill.
Okay, I have to hear this.
The notes confirmed the villains were scared away by Steve Hale's podiatrist act.
His podiatrist act. Steve Hale from Fuller House.
The very same. A character whose primary professional skill set involves foot care managed to save the wedding through the sheer force of his occupation.
This detail warrants a moment of deep appreciation. The villains were not defeated by magic, by the explosive power of bomb, by Red's rage, or by any traditional action sequence.
No. They were defeated by the threat or application of medical knowledge focused on feet. It is the ultimate anticlimax. It turns a major dramatic conflict into a moment of pure, absurdist comedy.
It completely subverts the expectation that a wedding climax must be resolved with violence.
It communicates a profound narrative message. In this world, professional expertise, no matter how specialized, is a weapon. You can survive a war, but you can't survive having Steve Hale talk about your bunions.
And the resolution following this high point of absurdity was just simple and sweet. They got married, followed by opening presents the next morning.
It anchors the high-stakes, ridiculous drama with a simple, relatable, family-oriented holiday tradition. It reminds the audience that beneath all the crossovers and the chaos, there is a stable family structure.
This enthusiasm for massive crossover events continued shortly thereafter with 3.2, the Christmas parade.
Yes, another festive milestone.
Yeah.
They're using the holiday setting as a perfect narrative engine to bring the large ensemble cast together again. The setting started relatively contained, the kids were at school, and a Miss Cathay Santony announced the parade after school. So, a natural, low-stakes community event.
And again, the episode was noted as being awesome, featuring music and having an impressive guest list. And this is where that previous boundary crossing with the Joe Smooth Cheeks romance really pays dividends.
How so?
By extending the IP integration.
Indeed. The guest list specifically confirmed that Joe, Blue, and Sprinkles were all there. This is vital. It means the Blue's Clues universe wasn't just represented by a single dating character in Joe.
Right.
The iconic puppy Blue and the beloved side character Sprinkles were also physically present at this community event. It confirms that these characters are full, functional citizens of the Whiz Kids world, not just occasional visitors or, hallucinations.
This commitment to integrating characters from completely separate IPs as full participants in community events, it just solidifies the show's unique world-building philosophy.
It's not a cameo.
No, it's an established reality that a blue puppy and a polka-dotted shape are marching next to humanized angry birds and a clumsy former sitcom star.
And beyond the celebrations, the series introduced a major long-term development in Season 7, which was essential for establishing stakes and continuity. 3.3 Laura's Children, triplets, and real-life inspiration.
This is a significant plot development. It's establishing the next generation of protagonists for potential future stories. Laura's biological children are born in Season 7. The notes are very specific about the birth details. They are triplet boys named Weston, Caden, and Braden.
And there is an important narrative link here that continually weaves the disparate factions together. The biological mother who birthed them was Felicia, who is Chuck's sister.
Ah, so from the Angry Squad.
Exactly. This immediately links the new main family members back to the Angry Squad, ensuring that the main human family and the humanized bird family are now genetically bound. It makes the world smaller and more interdependent.
So their initial role was minor, as you'd expect, given they were literally babies. They were described as sweet and innocent, functioning primarily as props for, heartwarming moments. But in Season 8, they became central to the main conflict.
Yes, the final season episode centered on the older kids and adults, protecting these infants from the main antagonist, King Chaos. The triplets provided immediate, high-stakes emotional leverage for the series' conclusion. You need a threat that compels every character to fight.
And protecting innocent babies is perhaps the strongest narrative motivator available.
It's a classic. And here we get to the specific meta-fact, which is crucial for understanding the creator's personalized process. The 3 boys are based on real people Jordan knows, who share the same names.
Really?
Yeah. While there are not triplets in real life, 2 of them are, and Weston is confirmed as the oldest one.
This tells us that the creation process wasn't solely driven by IP mashup or genre parody. It was a deeply personal reflection, mapping real-life connections, acquaintances, names onto fictional characters.
And specifically using the triplet plot point as a dramatic device. It suggests the creator was using familiar structures and people as emotional anchors for the narrative, grounding even the most outlandish plot lines in a personal reality.
I find this blend fascinating. You have a show that is a mashup of every major IP under the sun, yet the intimate emotional core, the names of the children who define the ultimate stakes, is rooted in the creator's actual acquaintance network. It's a very intimate and highly specific kind of world building.
Where the creator is literally inserting their own life into the fictional chaos.
Now that we've charted the universe and its milestones, we have to transition to the less glamorous side of the notes, but arguably the most important for understanding the series limits. Part 4, production reality, boundaries, and the endgame.
Hmm. And these documents provide a really candid look at the logistical struggles inherent in managing such a large, complex, and evolving cast, especially for what appears to be a passion project built on a foundation of borrowed IP.
Specifically, let's talk about 4.1, the struggle for voices. The notes acknowledge the very real, tangible difficulties of getting more voice actors, stating, "We're struggling to get more voice actors for the characters, but no one else volunteered."
That is a significant constraint for a show that relies so heavily on a massive ensemble cast and distinctive character voices.
And it speaks directly to your earlier point about First Surgeon and Robert singing the intro song.
Right. When you are struggling to find new talent, you have to be highly resourceful with the talent you already have on board.
And this struggle led to personnel shifts, which is always complicated in a small production environment. We learn about the specific incident involving the creator's brother, Roland, who used to voice some characters but got fired for personal reasons.
That is a very human, unscripted moment of production friction. Losing a core voice actor, especially a family member who is likely reliable and cheap labor, it means that existing characters have to be recast or written out or merged.
It shows how personal drama inevitably bleeds into the fictional world.
It does. It forces immediate rewrites and casting changes, proving that even in a world of whiz kids and humanized birds, the logistical reality of sibling conflict can derail the narrative flow.
But the notes reveal an even more fundamental casting dilemma, one related to the show's content rating. This was a serious obstacle in what seems like a world of creative freedom.
Absolutely. The creators stated they really wanted teenage kids to voice the child characters, which, makes perfect sense for authenticity, especially as the Blues were aged up to 12.
Of course.
But they explicitly couldn't use actual minors. And the reason was because the show is explicitly meant for a mature audience.
So you have this inherent conflict, the desire for authentic, realistic voices clashing directly with the mature content rating.
Exactly. Using real children in a show that deals with mature themes, war, and possibly explicit content likely raises immediate legal and ethical issues that the production wisely avoided.
So that meant the child characters, even the triplets, had to be voiced by adults. They had to sacrifice realism for safety and, compliance with the mature theme.
And this dichotomy, it just shows the limitations imposed even on highly imaginative, boundary-pushing storytelling. You can cross major corporate IP boundaries and make Angry Birds human, but you cannot cross the boundary related to child labor laws and explicit content regulations.
It's an important distinction between creative freedom and regulatory reality.
It is.
And that brings us to the ultimate conclusion of the series with 4.2, The War is Over, Forgiveness and Finality. This wraps up the narrative, but it also introduces the creator's self-reflection on the show's wild trajectory.
The creator felt this final episode provided a good ending. However, the mechanism for closure was surprising. For a world that deals with wars and existential threats from a king chaos,
How did it end?
the resolution was achieved because the villains simply stopped fighting, and critically, everyone forgave each other.
That is an incredibly peaceful and almost radically anticlimactic resolution for what sounds like a long-running multi-seasonal conflict. In a show that thrives on the absurd, the ultimate absurdity is perhaps the simplest, most sentimental ending possible.
It suggests the show prioritized emotional closure and character harmony over a final, devastating battle. Which, could also be interpreted as a pragmatic decision. Maybe the budget didn't allow for a huge final action sequence.
True.
Regardless, the choice to end with universal forgiveness emphasizes the ultimate stability of the ensemble family unit, despite all the chaos they endured.
But this feeling of narrative satisfaction was immediately countered by a note of regret from the creator. They wish they could have made 2 more seasons.
Which is a common refrain for creators. That simultaneous feeling of satisfaction with the ending and longing for continuation, especially when you feel you left potential stories on the table with a cast this large.
And here is the profound moment of self-correction. The creator offered a highly specific reason for the lack of continuation, acknowledging that this end may be a consequence of when you cross boundaries.
That is a powerful retrospective insight. What boundaries are they referring to?
Hmm.
Was the boundary crossing the radical IP integration? Joe dating Smooth Cheeks, humanized Angry Birds existing, which proved narratively unsustainable or legally complicated?
Or was it the complexity of the narrative structure itself, just making it too difficult to manage?
It's likely both. The creator recognized that the show's unique identity, its reliance on IP fusion, and its chaotic maximalist structure was both its greatest strength and the ultimate cause of its finite lifespan.
So the creative freedom that allowed them to build this universe eventually became the barrier to its long-term continuation.
Exactly.
That realization sets the stage for the potential but complicated future. 4.3, the future and the Viacom hope.
Right. Despite the definitive narrative closure and the acknowledged boundary-crossing history, the creator stated they might just bring the show back. This shows that the creative spark remains. They aren't fully ready to abandon the Kidz universe.
But the specific hurdle is critical, and it brings us right back to the core premise of the show. The revival depends on whether the company Viacom just might let me.
So what does this all mean? It means the future hinges entirely on corporate approval, specifically from Viacom. This is the company that's the parent of many intellectual properties that the series so liberally used.
Most notably, the Blue's Clues universe.
Most notably, the fact that the creator crossed those IP boundaries, dating Joe, having Blue and Sprinkles at a parade, now means the revival is contingent on the very companies whose boundaries were blurred and whose content was appropriated for the sake of the narrative.
It is the ultimate paradox of creative freedom. The creative decisions that define the show, the unauthorized merging of IP, are now the biggest constraint in seeking continuation.
The creator's genius lay in merging IP. But that merger might require official licensing or, at the very least, a negotiation with the entities whose characters were used so freely. It's a classic lesson in the relationship between fan culture and corporate ownership.
The creator built a canonical universe where these characters lived together, proving that the world works. But the question of whether it can return is no longer a creative one.
It's a legal one. The creator is caught in the consequences of their own boundary-pushing creativity.
We've covered a production universe just filled with humanized Angry Birds, profound Blue's Clues romance, and celebrity podiatrist heroism. The level of specificity and self-awareness in these notes shows a series that was anything but conventional.
It was charting its own course through the media landscape by refusing to acknowledge traditional limitations.
It's fascinating how much organizational knowledge is embedded in these creative decisions. From justifying an aging character like the Blues with new gaming consoles, to mapping real-life family names onto fictional triplets used as ultimate dramatic stakes.
This document gives us a rare glimpse into the logistical, personal, and metatextual choices that created an entire, highly specific world. And the decision to end on forgiveness, followed by that deep regret of stopping, it just underscores the passionate commitment of the creator.
They executed a complete vision, even if that vision proved too complicated to easily continue.
It's a closed loop of unique creativity, now just waiting for corporate permission to restart.
So we know the creator regretted crossing boundaries, directly linking that action to the show's end. Maybe referencing the difficulty of IP management or the adult nature of the show conflicting with casting. But given the show's ability to pull in characters like Joe, Blue, and Sprinkles, and given the necessity of extreme novelty to stand out, did the mature audience setting require those boundary crossings to feel truly original and compelling? Could the Kidz documentary 2 have even existed without those radical IP mergers? That's something to think about as you consider the role of genre blending and intellectual property appropriation in creative media today.